can go live. Fetching video stream. There we go. Go live. Okay. And then there.
It's a complex series of
And I
process.
talk to myself. Like, that's just how... I'm sorry, but that's just what I do.
Sure.
I'm offended.
My boss always, like... He's always laughing at me because he hears me all the time in my office. And he's like, who are you talking? Are you on the phone? No, I'm just talking to myself.
Yeah. My good friend Andrew Kern says it's when you stop talking to yourself, that's when you start going crazy.
Well, that's... Yeah, hey. I like that. I like that. You good, Dave? Let's see, I'll grab this so that way I can make sure that I know what I'm doing. Well,
Yeah, I'm just
what was wrong with it? Seems like that.
So that way I can make sure
Oops.
that I know what I'm doing. There we go. That's fine. It's back. I didn't end up changing.
You were just, yeah.
I was just trying to get it a little bit wider, but then these things get in the shot. Okay.
Okay, let's...
So the first segment is the drink.
Mm-hmm.
The second segment will be the gear.
Okay.
And the third and fourth segment will be the topic.
Okay.
And we'll we'll walk you... The first one's fun. First one's a fun one, in my opinion.
I agree. Is that too loud?
Welcome to the Catholic Man Show. We're on the Lord's team, the winning side, so raise your glass. I am Adam Minahan, sitting here in studio. To my right is my co-host, best friend David Niles. To my left is our guest for this evening this has been a long time in the making. I'm excited to have him here, Mr. Andrew Pudawa. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
It is awesome to be here with you. Thank you.
So the studio, you heard me just say
The
that.
studio, because you study and you...
And it's the studio.
Studio.
And it's where the studs hang out.
Okay.
So that's...
I mean, look at us. Here we are.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, I'm feeling a little low on the muscle side here myself.
So Andrew, why don't I, before we get going on our man beverage, that's the first thing we do. Why don't I let you have a long list of things that you're a part of. How about I just open the floor and let you kind of introduce yourself to the audience?
Okay, sure. Well, I guess first and most importantly, I'm a convert to the Catholic Church. 1999, along with my wife and most of my children, who are all grown now. I have 7 grown children. I have 11 grandchildren.
All right.
They're coming fast and furious.
Which is awesome.
And I'm a homeschooling dad, now a homeschooling grandparent, I guess you have to say. And I also have a little company called the Institute for Excellence in Writing, and we publish curriculum pertaining to the arts of language. And I do a lot of travel and work with homeschool families, and also Catholic schools and a few public schools and other private schools as well.
I'm sure that this will come up later in our conversation. The website, is it IEW.com?
That's it, yeah.
Yes.
Institute for Excellence in Writing, IEW.
.com.
IEW.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
So you can go ahead, if you want, you can skip ahead and go check that out. Especially if you're a homeschooler, but even if you're not, if you're a school teacher or whatever.
Yes.
So, we're Andrew, Mr. Pudawa. Can I call you Andrew?
Please call me Andrew.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I need to call you like, yes, Mr. Boudoir.
No. Just because I'm old, but
No.
you know.
It's because every time I hear you talk, whenever the talk is over, I think, no, don't stop, please, keep going. You know, you're just so well. You just know so much about everything that I wish I knew about. You know, in my mind, have you read? You did. I know you've read this book, Miss Prim.
The
The
yes,
Adventures,
The Awakening.
The Awakening of
The
Miss Prim.
Awakening of Miss Prim. Yes, what an incredible book.
I wish I was the man in the wingback chair.
Well, we all do.
Yeah,
That's
I feel like
the point of the book.
you might actually be
The man in the
at that guy's level. Anyway, let's get to the drink because
Okay, I'm very excited
I'm
about
a little
this.
parched.
Okay, I'm very excited about this. This evening's drink is brought to you by Dr. Michael Malloy, a parishioner of Christ the King, and he just went on an excursion to Ireland with he and his wife, and tried a few different Irish whiskeys, and brought this back across the pond for us to try on the Catholic Man Show. So the drink this evening is Tyrconnell. It's an single malt Irish whiskey. And I'm really excited about it because, one, Dave, I feel like that we haven't had enough Irish whiskeys on the show.
Mm-hmm.
As a man whose family is from Cork, Ireland,
Yeah.
I feel like that I'm not maybe doing justice to my family by at least representing having some Irish whiskey. But Tyrconnell is a very light, refreshing whiskey, and actually on the bottle, if you'll see here, it is here I can put on the bev cam for just a second. It is a horse racing, right?
Looks like it, yeah.
And
Yeah.
the story goes that Tyrconnell, which means O'Connell in that part of Ireland, I think it's the northwest part of Ireland, I believe.
Really?
Don't quote me on that, but in that area, it means O'Connell. And they named a horse Tyrconnell, and he had 100-1 odds, 100-1, and he won.
Sweet.
And so they changed the label about 150 years ago, and
so it's a recent
recent change.
Yeah,
recent change
in the world of whiskey. That's actually not that long ago.
150 years ago, to commemorate.
Can we have
Tyrconnell.
these? You're putting them up
I'm
here.
sorry.
I just
Yes.
Just curious.
So to represent the winner of the race, Tyrconnell. So,
Sweet.
Without further ado, let's cheers to Dr. Michael Malloy, who was generous enough to bring this across the pond for us to try this evening. We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
Cheers to Jesus.
Cheers. So it's a very light color in color. Instantly on the nose, you get this lemon, citrusy apple type of smell. A little
fresh.
bit of a very refreshing smell.
I typically associate Irish whiskeys with lemon, right or wrong. I do. But there's lemon in a lot. You get that with a lot of whiskey, really. But it's more prominent, I think, in Irish whiskey than other styles.
Yes, and it's you almost smell a little bit of honey as well. If you can smell a little bit of honey, a little sweetness to it. So, what are your thoughts? You just you had a
You
little
can
sip.
definitely taste honey. It's just so nice.
Which is smooth.
Yeah.
Very smooth.
It's very silky, almost very smooth. It does have a little bit of that. You can taste the lemon. You can taste a little bit of the honey, but it is very smooth.
Yeah. It doesn't have a bite that sometimes the
Yeah.
lesser types of bourbons and whiskeys have.
Yes, I agree. Which is, I mean, if you're going to drink a whiskey, you want to. You want something like that where
You want to make it
pleasant to drink. Yeah.
The only danger is you could drink it faster. than
Right.
You should.
Yes.
That's possible. But.
And that is actually what we talked about last week when we had a sour beer. Have you ever had a sour beer before?
Oh yes, I had the most sour of sour beers.
Really?
And I gave my wife some, and she didn't know what it was, and she was like, almost spew out of her mouth. I love that sour. I love bitter. I love sour. I love hot.
Oh, well, I wish we still had some. One of our listeners gave us a bottle that he had brewed himself, that he had aged in Chardonnay barrels for 3 years.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
It was very good. And I'm not a big sour guy, but it was good.
But we talked about how the sour helped you kind of moderate your drinking. Instead of
Yeah.
like,
Because one thing is you can't chug something sour.
No.
Yeah, just little by little. So it was kind of a nice moderator that was built in.
Dave, we haven't talked recently, and Andrew's new to the show, about why we drink on air. Let's refresh. I think it's important. We have new listeners all the time. And if they've just now catching it and they're like, what are these guys doing drinking on air? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so some people might say, what are you guys trying to just glorify drinking? And no, that's not what we're trying to do at all. What we're trying to do is glorify the byproducts that come with a good drink, especially when you're in good company. It really helps bring people together, helps, I think, bond, seal, strengthen relationships. Also, God made everything in this earth good. And inasmuch as things are good, they should be enjoyed and glorified for their goodness, because ultimately they all give glory to God. And so when we glorify a good whiskey, we glorify God. Now, everything needs to be properly moderated and in the right proportion. And so that's what we always try to do. Also, we realize that you cannot, it's very difficult to promote moderation when if you don't drink anything at all.
That is very true. Yeah.
And so in order to promote the idea of being moderate in our drinking, we have a drink so that we can just, we can do it. Also, they're just so good. And in the effort of living a true leisurely life, a good drink it's a good thing to have. I think every gentleman needs to have a drink. If you drink, not everybody drinks, and that's fine. But if you do, I think you should have this is my favorite, whether it's a straight up something.
You mean
like
a
whiskey.
go-to drink?
Yeah,
Is that
like
what you mean?
what's your drink, and you need to know how to make it. Have maybe even be well versed in making it, whatever that is. If it's a Moscow Mule or a old fashioned, just whatever.
Do you have a favorite drink, Andrew?
I'm normally kind of a wine person, so red wines would be my first
Cabs?
choice. Yeah, or a Pinot.
Pinot?
Yeah.
Have you had the red wines that have been aged in bourbon barrels?
Oh, yes.
What are your thoughts on those?
Oh, I like that because it's smokier. It's really,
Right.
It's got this depth to it. And
Complex.
again, interestingly, you can't drink those as fast as you might.
Sure.
Right.
The aging, the bourbon barrel, the density of it makes it, I don't know, little. Just you want to sip it. You want it to savor.
Savor.
Yeah, savor.
Savor it.
Yeah. Someday, when I become very, very wealthy, I'm going to drink a lot more wine, because it's just more expensive. You could spend $60 on a nice scotch or a nice bottle of wine. The difference is that bottle of wine is going to be gone within 24 hours of opening it.
Well, that's true. But if this show gets more and more popular, there will be people sending you bottles of wine.
Now there's an idea.
That is an idea that I can get behind. We want to thank Dr. Michael Malloy for sending this Tyrconnell single malt Irish whiskey. We're here with Andrew Pudawa in studio. I'm Adam Minahan with David Niles, and we are on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass. David, can you make it where
I'm gonna turn
we
it
can
down.
see it? Also, where
Yeah.
we can see it going. Let's make sure we haven't hit anybody or any questions. We got some people from Florida listening. Glenn Carlson, our buddy Glenn, is listening from Florida. We got Warren, who's listening from Philly. Margot says that she's not listening right now, she has to get back to us. Lance here from The Coaster. Have you listened? Do you listen to The Coaster podcast?
Not yet.
You haven't? That needs to be something you need to do. It's a great podcast. If you haven't
Okay.
listened to it, it's called The Coaster.
It's on my radar.
Ollie's listening. Our buddy Ollie.
Oh, sweet.
Strong Family Financial. Where did you get your shirt, Dave? Somebody asked. Warren asked. RomanticCatholic.com?
I think maybe this one. No, this one is from RomanticCatholic.com, but they were at the Wichita Family Conference at a booth.
Yes.
and they had it, and so I bought it there. So I didn't get it from the website, but same place.
Before we get going on our second segment, can you turn my mic up, Dave?
Yeah, do you want your mic or your headphones up?
My mic, because I can hear you guys just fine, but I'm having to be like really close to hear me.
He's got his mouth really close to that
Yeah,
mic.
yeah, he gets his.
He's got the special effect.
Yes.
By the way, do you know the origin of the word studio?
No.
Well, it's Latin,
Okay.
and it's studio studiorum means zeal.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Why have we not thought of this yet?
So when you
to look this up.
when you study because you have zeal for learning, and a good student would be a student that's very zealous.
This is why, guys. This is why
we have Andrew Pudowa
Pudowa.
here.
So we're not recording right now on the podcast, but Facebook Live can still
Catch
okay.
us.
Yeah. So those people.
Well, you said studio. It made me think, what is that word? And then I recalled the Latin.
Yes,
Nice.
of course.
Yeah.
I simply
That's what I do too.
simply recalled the Latin.
Well, my friend Martin Cawthorne said, to be a gentleman, you don't have to know Latin, but you must have learned enough to have forgotten some.
Well, I guess that makes me a gentleman. I
Et
took
cum
Latin.
spiritu.
Et cum spiritu tuo.
Did you get my joke?
Yes.
That was a
Only
joke.
at the end. Only at the end.
Okay.
Another interesting word origin is school. The word school comes from the Greek skole, which means leisure. Now, a lot of students in school don't think about it that way, but in the ancient times, it was only people with leisure, i.e. they didn't have to do a lot of hard work,
Right.
Mhm.
They were in the
who had
fields.
the leisure to study, to have zeal and learn. So
Kids these days, they
Yeah.
don't know how good they got it.
no, I think, a good year of slave labor, about 12 years old, that would put them on the right track
Yeah.
for high school, don't you?
Yeah. See about how excited you are to do your homework now.
Yeah.
You're onto something right there.
Yeah.
Not my idea. Maria Montessori came up with a long time before I did,
He seems like a good guy. My 3-year-old is in Catechesis of the Good Shepherd.
Yes. We can talk about that. I know quite a bit about Maria Montessori and the Montessori method, and her religious education program is called the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. And
What did we title this episode again? Just want to make sure.
Literature and the and moral imagination.
Okay.
I only had to ask 3 times.
Right.
And that was before you drank
Yeah, that was before I had a sip of alcohol.
the whiskey.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
We shall nobly proceed.
Yes. Let's do this. Yeah, Jim said we're missing great content for the show. Roll the tape.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles. Here with Adam Minahan as usual. However, we are joined today by Mr. Andrew Pudowa. Thanks for being here, Andrew.
It's a pleasure. I'm having a blast.
So we recently, here in the Diocese of Tulsa in eastern Oklahoma, we hired a couple gentlemen, one of which who has been on the show already, Marcel Brown, Dr. Marcel Brown.
Yes.
And then Dr. Richard Malash.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Malash?
It's like goulash, but
Malash.
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 Richard Malash.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
We have him scheduled. I
Or
think.
in the we're in the process of
It was
scheduling.
scheduled. Now it's to be anyway. Dr. Richard recently told me that of all the people he knows, you are the foremost expert on classical education in the country. that is what he said. Now he could be a total liar. He could.
I would say maybe he just hasn't met a whole lot of other people that I know that are smarter than me, but he himself is
He's very
phenomenally well-educated
He is.
individual.
Yes, he is.
So you'll have a great conversation with him.
We have a lot of talent here in the diocese.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of those guys where when you have a conversation with him, you're just so nervous that you're going to say something ridiculous and make yourself look stupid.
I'm not nervous about that.
Only he's so generous in his
and gentle.
spirit
And gentle.
that even
yeah.
if you did say something stupid, you wouldn't know it.
I know.
Because he would
That's-
respect that.
And that's the part that I don't like.
That's why that's what qualifies him to have such an amazing beard.
Yes.
Okay, let's get going.
Our man gear for today, so we're going to be talking about imagination, literature, and just those kinds of... We're going to be just having a discussion in that realm. And so we were talking... It took us a while to come up with a good man gear today, but then when it came to us, this is a really good man gear. We want to talk about a bookshelf.
Bookshelves. Oh, there's never enough bookshelves.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
And you want the perfect bookshelf.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe someday
They may
you will
make
have
yeah.
the perfect bookshelf.
I think if you're not a carpenter and you can't make it, because only your perfect bookshelf... I don't want to, go off into moral relativism here, but I think that your bookshelf might be different from somebody else's perfect bookshelf.
Well, I guess it depends on what's on the bookshelf, but I will describe the perfect bookshelf.
Please.
Yes.
I have seen. So last May, I was blessed to be able to go to St. Petersburg, Russia. I was over there for the Global Home Education Conference.
Wow.
And I had a few days. I took my wife and we toured around St. Petersburg, which is my new favorite city on the planet.
Wow.
Anyway, there is a museum there that once was, well, before the communist era, it was the royal home of the Romanovs.
Okay.
And they had recreated the study of Tsar Nicholas. And in that study, it had the most magnificent set of bookshelves that I have ever imagined. It was one of those ones that goes up very, very high, and it's kind of multi-layered, and it had that rolling ladder.
Yes.
I love the ladder.
That you could roll, and then you could go up, and you got the feeling that you could store an almost unlimited number of books, and it was just majestic to look at.
True or false? Can you have too many books? I guess that's not a true or false. That's not a true or false.
I think that I have got to the point of having too many books because I've started to number my days. Right? I mean, you guys are young. I'm old. I buy books faster than I read them.
As do I. Look at all these books over here.
But see, I started to calculate how many years I'm likely to live and how many books I would have to read a year just to read the ones I've got, let alone the ones I'm likely to buy in the next few months or years.
Sure.
So I think you can have too many books. But then again, Erasmus said, I think it was Erasmus, when I have money, I buy books. If I have anything left, then I buy food.
Well, there's something about, just like anything that we do, setting yourself in the atmosphere to bring the ambiance of initializing reading. Like, it's almost like, for me, if I'm coffee shops don't do it for me.
No, me neither.
I can't get into the book. I'm too distracted. It's too loud. But if I come up here to the studio and I have quite a bit of books over there. I have a nice bookshelf right here that has it's categorized, and I sit down and I don't even know what I'm going to read yet, but I pick it out. I look through all my books. I pick one out. It brings this idea, like this sensation of I want to read. So there's something about like having even if you have more books than you can actually read, I think it brings a little bit of the ambiance to reading.
No, and environment is so critical, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. It's like, I was on an airplane this morning. Magazine. That fits an airplane. Just pull it out, you read a little bit, doze off maybe.
Yeah.
The living room. That's the books to read to your children, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's the study. Mm-hmm. The study or the studio. We were talking at the break, the Latin origin of that word, studio, is zeal. So a man, if he's got his bookshelf, even if he doesn't have a whole room to call a study,
right,
he can have his bookshelf, and that's like the study zone.
Yeah.
The studio, the zeal zone.
Yeah.
Ooh, the zeal zone.
The zeal zone.
Right. And then pull the book that fits the moment, that feeds the spirit,
yeah,
that enlightens the mind for the next day, week.
Yeah, I think there's a difference in, when we're talking about how many books. Well, you couldn't read that many books. Well, you might not be able to finish that many books,
right,
but you could certainly, like Adam, what you were saying, maybe read, sample from some. But the idea of a bookshelf, especially in the home, in a place that's you go by a lot. I think it does a lot to promote. When I think about this, I think about myself. I have small children. My oldest daughter is only 3. And we are trying to promote a culture of reading in the house. And so having a bookshelf is very, very important to that. One bookshelf we have has shelves all the way to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't necessarily use it this way, but we could, and maybe we should do this, put children's books on that bottom shelf where they could have their own books. So if they see us, getting books out of the, from the bookshelf, oh, I want to do that too, and they have their own shelf down there.
We always organized it that way so that the young children's books were the lowest.
Yeah.
And then the books that would be good for the older children were kind of in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And then the books, that maybe they wouldn't be as interested in, we'd put up on the higher end. And you still run out of space.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the sad things happen. The books have to go into boxes.
Oh, that is sad.
That is sad. So somehow we just need more bookshelves. The other thing I would mention is when we moved here to Oklahoma 9 years ago, we put a bookshelf right next to the dining room table. And so when I'm there with the family and everything, I can just reach over, pull off a book. I can just read right there at the table. I don't have to go away to get it. And that, I think, was one of the coolest things. My wife wanted to keep the dining room kind of, I don't know, artistically nice.
Yeah.
And I said, no, practical. That's what we want. A bookshelf right here.
That's what men want.
And then I went one step further. I put a whiteboard on the wall in the dining room so I could, just like stand up and draw things on the whiteboard as I was teaching my family at dinner.
Excellent. I love it.
One thing that I think I struggled with until somebody told me this, and I think it was Brandon Vaught from Word on Fire. I heard him say, don't get caught up in reading the book from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
If it's
This is me.
If it's too laborious,
you're describing
and
me right now.
You're out. You've already out. You're done with the book, and you're only 3/4 of the way through.
Be done.
Be done.
Forgive yourself.
Yeah.
There's
Close
no
the book.
obligation.
Yeah. And by doing that, I have learned that I have read more books this year. I have read more books than I have probably the last 3 years combined.
Really?
Because of this tactic. Because I've realized now you can't use that as an excuse. Like, oh, I just want to be done. But if I am not interested any longer, I'm not there's too many books in too short a time. I'm not gonna labor over these books that I'm not enjoying, because there are gonna be books out there that I will enjoy.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you eat too much of what you're not thrilled with eating, then you don't have room for the things you would prefer to eat. Books the same. I make a lot of times this analogy between books and food, because there's junk food, there's junk books. Sometimes they're okay. But then there's the highly nutritious food. There's the highly nutritious books. So
yeah,
maybe that's a new way to organize a bookshelf. Junk food.
Ooh, I like that.
Cheap food.
Junk food at the top. Make it hard to get to.
Expensive food. Delicacy books.
Yes.
Delicacy books.
So this kind of reminds me of my wife and I, we're attempting to read books. We read books together, and we pick books from John Senior's list of great books.
Mm-hmm.
We were reading Robinson Crusoe, and I think maybe we picked it. I picked this book. We take turns picking ones. This was my pick. I think maybe it was too
overshot
soon.
a little.
Yeah, it was too soon. The language is kind of hard, and we definitely suffered through that book. But we finished it, and it's like, there. Now I can say I read it. It's on the shelf. Like, oh yeah, I read that book. How was it? It was okay. I think I would have appreciated it more if it was, if I was a better reader in the first place.
Well, and maybe if your kids were a little older, they would have been perhaps a little more engaged.
Mm-hmm.
I know
or if we had boys.
That would help.
Yes.
Especially Robinson Crusoe.
Yes.
But it's still on the shelf.
It is there. We can come back to it.
Pick it up in 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when we get back, we're going to jump into the topic. We've been drinking Tyrconnell.
Yeah.
We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass. All right.
Sweet. That went well.
Literature and the moral imagination. I like it.
Is there anything that you want us to make sure to touch base on, like as far as sticking, like bullet points, like make sure to say something?
No,
Okay.
I think any question.
Okay.
I have so many. So.
Good.
We can roll them around, and you've read Senior's Restoration of Christian Culture. And,
I have not read it.
Oh, well, let's mention that book.
Okay.
'Cause that was probably one of the most important books. It's definitely on the top 10 most important books I've read in my life.
Okay.
Do you have a top 10 favorite book list?
I used to announce my book of the year.
Okay.
So I would every year say this is my particular book of the year.
Is that somewhere?
Not really. I
Okay.
kind of lost track of it.
So you don't have like a list, like if I said, what are your top 10 favorite books? Do you have that list off the top of your head?
I don't know. Probably I could come up with 10.
10 really good. I think it's so hard to say like these are the best.
Right.
You could just say these are 10 are really awesome.
Right. But, each book affects you in a particular way. And, there's fiction, there's literature, and then there's other books, religious books or biographies. I'm big into biographies right now. I generally am always reading one book and listening to another one.
Right?
And so I'm reading a biography of Mao Zedong by his personal physician. It's called The Private Life of Mao. Unbelievably weird. And I'm listening to a biography of Lyndon Johnson, who's a total psychopath. I mean, sociopath. The guy just had no morals, no actual values other than power for himself. It's a fascinating book. Of course, those were world leaders when I was a little kid.
Right,
So
sure.
that's why it's of interest.
Yeah.
To me. And
I have recently gotten into biographies. I've read 3 Winston Churchill books, and I finished my first Theodore Roosevelt book.
Oh, yes. Have you read Raymond Arroyo's biography of
Mother Angelica? Which one?
Well,
Yes,
the
two.
first one.
Is phenomenal. I actually recommend not even reading it, going straight to the
Listen
audiobook.
to it.
Yeah, 'cause he
because
did
he
a
reads it.
great
He can do
job.
the voices.
Oh, it's so-
just bring it to life. But that book, that's like blow your mind. Stranger than fiction kind of thing.
Well, and the way he
It's on
writes,
my
he
phone.
writes in a very beautiful.
He does.
I remember hearing samples of it on the radio after Mother Angelica died, and it was just 10 seconds of listening to him, I was already just captivated and just because he's
a great
and
storyteller.
eloquent, and he's just so just his language it's a good book,
Yeah.
like a good book should be.
Ooh, my mom's watching and listening. Hi, Mom.
Before we get started on the next, I just wanted to. So John Senior, one of the things he says is you have to read the 100.
You read
Good
the
books.
1,000 good books so that you can read the 100 great books.
Okay, so there's 100 great books, but you have to read 1,000
This is
first.
very laborious.
Well, I don't think, I think those numbers are somewhat
Skewed.
metaphorical.
Yeah.
Good.
But he is
glad we're
essentially
talking
saying that with, children need to be steeped in the good literature so that they will appreciate the great.
Yeah.
An example he gives is children need to grow up with Mother Goose so they can appreciate Shakespeare.
Okay.
Ooh, Taylor Scholl's. He just called me out for not giving him a shout out. I gave him. Obviously, I'm going to give my mom a shout out before Taylor Scholl. I don't think that's a shocker to anybody, right?
If
I did
reversed it, that wouldn't be good.
I feel like I'd have to go back. I went to confession yesterday. I don't want to have to go back today.
I don't know
Or
if you
this
have to
evening.
go to confession for that, but
that's pretty minimal.
yeah,
Wow.
it's certainly more appropriate in the
Yes.
order that you did it.
So, take that, Taylor.
Hey Taylor, what's up, man?
I'm just joking. All right, let's get going. Let's get going. Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. Adam Minahan here, forgetting that it is my turn to bring us back to the show. Welcome. If you're in the podcast, thank you for listening for the last 15 seconds. If you're listening on radio, Thank you, because that is what helps pay the bills for the Catholic radio station, including one of our sponsors, IEW.com. Here with the founder, Andrew Pudawa. Andrew, thank you so much.
Oh, I love what you guys do.
Yeah, so if you are listening to us on 94.9 Catholic Radio, St. Michael Radio here in Tulsa, make sure...
Or Oklahoma.
But
or Louisiana.
Or Louisiana.
Or Kansas.
But I want to talk specifically to our Tulsa listeners. Make sure that you tune in at 3:25 any day of the week, because you will catch Mr. Andrew Pudawa in a 5-minute snippet of... Is it a podcast that you have?
I think we've given you just little excerpts from conference talks I've given, and maybe some podcasts and different things that hopefully are, interesting on a 5-minute chunk.
They are. They're all awesome. Every day I try. Well,
3:25.
I can typically 3:25. It's from 3:25 to 3:30. Typically, I can catch it on Friday, because I'll maybe leave the office earlier on Friday. So whenever I get in, it's right after the Divine Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, just
check that out.
Make sure 3:25. So our topic for today is literature and the moral imagination.
Mm-hmm.
This is a topic title that you suggested. So let me ask you this about imagination, because I heard this, got this idea from a talk that I went to of yours at Holy Family, and just the idea of cultivating an imagination for an adult man. Because I kind of think about, imagination, that's for kids. Then you grow up and you put away all your childish. But what is the function of a man's imagination? Why does he need it for? What should he do with it?
That's a great question. I have been thinking about imagination. What is it? I mean, literally, what does it mean? It means being able to create images in your mind. What kind of images do you want in your mind? What are you furnishing your mind with? So in the Catholic world, we appreciate the tradition of the good, the true, the beautiful. And so what we furnish our mind with will be those thoughts, those ideas, those pictures, those words that will come to us sometimes randomly, right? I mean, you're just working, you're driving, you're living life, you're doing something, and boom, some thought comes to you. Well, where does it come from? It has to come from your bank, your store, your storehouse of ideas. So we furnish the mind with good, true, beautiful language, images, concepts. So that, to me, that's kind of where you start the conversation about imagination. I mean, a lot of people think imagination, I'm going to go and draw a picture that nobody ever drew before, or I'm going to, think of something that nobody ever thought of before. I'm going to come up with some completely new, weird idea, but that's not actually the way human beings create.
Okay,
so how do they create?
Well, God creates something from nothing, right?
Right.
The rest of us are kind of stuck with what we've got.
Right.
So you take, for example, probably the master of imaginative literature, at least of the modern age, would be Tolkien, right? And The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I was in New Zealand a month and a half ago, so I got to go to Hobbiton and actually see the set of the movie and hear some stories and stuff. But, I grew up reading Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. So where did all that come from? Well, if you read Beowulf, you realize that this great dragon that sits on treasure and is hatred of mankind and peace and wants to destroy goodness, that comes from Beowulf, right? And so this idea of slaying the dragon, it's an ancient idea, and it gets reiterated. And as it gets reiterated again and again, then we, for some reason, like that idea. G.K. Chesterton, I know you've read some Chesterton.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I would recommend to all the listeners, if you've never read anything by Chesterton, just go get, It's a chapter from Orthodoxy called The Ethics of Elfland. It's free. Get it online. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to buy a whole book. You have to read a whole book.
Right.
Just read this chapter. And he says, we don't read fairy tales to children so that they know that dragons exist. Children already know dragons exist. We read fairy tales so they know that dragons can be slain. And so we love that story of the victory of good over evil. We love that story.
Right.
I mean, every superhero movie,
Yes.
every book that has this epic nature to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We love to see the victory of good over evil.
So this makes me think that, as a man, I'm very often offended at immoral acts that take place, or when something wrong happens, because I say, no, that's not how it should be. It's not supposed to be that way. And the imagination is kind of does that.
Sure.
That our imagination sort of like dragons are supposed to be evil.
That's right. As are witches and goblins and trolls, and they should be killed, not tolerated.
Right. So having this, a vivid imagination, or I think maybe as adults we say, oh, that person is very creative. We just maybe don't say, oh, he has a vivid imagination, because if you say that about a man, he has a vivid imagination, people will think like you're saying he's a little kooky and not in touch with reality. But if you say, oh, wow, he's so creative, that's maybe more of a compliment. They're kind of similar, and maybe...
Well, probably the most creative person ever to live was Jesus.
No doubt. I have no doubt about it.
Because he could actually create
Right.
something from nothing.
Safe bet.
Yeah.
But how did he communicate truth to people? Through story, through imagination.
Yeah.
He could conjure up this image, say, of the prodigal son, or of the servant who hid the talents so that he wouldn't have any risk of losing them. And we can relate to those stories better in many cases than the whole rest of it. That's what sticks in our mind. So the images stick in our mind, and then we can recall them, and then we can apply them to life.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. Or the creation stories. I mean, so much of the Old Testament is that way. But having that well-developed imagination kind of makes it's another just ingrained truth. It seems like, because you now know in another way the way things are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And because I always used to think, oh, there's no rules to an imagination, but maybe that's not true. There kind of are still guiding principles that everybody has in common in their imagination, that like, for instance, you don't have an imagination that you wouldn't ever value immoral things in your imagination. There are still many of the same basic fundamental truths. No matter how creative you're going to be, or if you think a thought nobody's ever had before, you're still going to abide by those moral principles that you have. Maybe your moral principles are bad, but it's still going to follow those.
I think that's where literature comes in, and it informs our moral imagination. So we might be tempted to think a thought and be attracted or enamored with something that is wrong. But if we have a story that can correct that, right?
Yeah.
And we say, oh, okay, you walk down that path, that doesn't go where you want to go, ultimately. So literature has this great corrective influence, I think. We learn timeless truths through the good and great books.
Yes. Okay. So I'm glad you brought that up, because
How much time do we have left? Do you know? Before I hit the break?
we've got.
Because I don't want you to open up a can that we can't finish here.
Okay. Well, I'm going to.
Okay, go ahead. That's okay.
I've recently encountered this idea that if you simply read some of these classic books, you might not be aware of what you have learned, or you might not think, because they're not factual books, they're just stories, that, you haven't really learned anything. But if you read them it will change the way that you think, because you come to see a new aspect of the world, I guess, just through fiction.
Mm-hmm.
My whole life, growing up, once I started diving into the faith, I had this attitude that I'm not going to waste my time reading fiction.
I had that same feeling.
Yeah.
Never mind.
But
I'm not gonna say that.
it's only recently, and a lot of it was listening to your talks and going to the Idea of a Village conference a couple of years ago. That
I still really struggle with it.
Yeah, and
to this day, I didn't grow up reading fiction. I didn't grow up reading books at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was the guy who was like, I went through all of high school and I didn't read a single book.
Yeah.
That was like my thing that I was like,
I think a lot of people got poisoned against literature by high school, because I don't know what you didn't read or what you did read or what you could have read, but I know for me, a lot of what they gave us was this kind of existentialist, depressing, hopeless kind of literature. Why would you give that to hormone zapped out teenagers and say, read this to become a better person? No, that's not the goal.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, when we get back, I want to pick this up because I have a lot of questions for sure. We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass. Would you like a little bit? Here, feel free if you'd like a little bit more.
Sure, it's good stuff.
So I do want to ask this, and I want to ask it off necessarily the podcast. People are still listening on. They'll be able to hit this on YouTube and Facebook. But
okay.
ViewTube.
All right.
There's a competitor right there, ViewTube.
Hey, there's your $1 million.
Yeah.
So I struggle reading fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle. I've read 2/3 of The Hobbit, and it was laborious for me. Only because the whole time I'm sitting here saying, I don't need to know what the moss on the stone that was on the north side. I don't need to know. I don't even know that there's 15 of these hobbits. Just tell me the characters that I need to know about and tell me what's happening. Like, it just seemed like it was like going. It kept going.
Yeah. Tolkien is kind of well known for.
Yeah, and the whole time I'm just in here like, I just want to know what.
It's not as bad as Moby Dick.
Well, yeah. Hence why I probably haven't,
Well,
so I struggle very much with fiction.
One thing that you'll notice about modern movies, and I think this is a good comparison. Modern movies, there's no, quote, wasted minutes, right? I mean,
right.
Every single thing that happens in a movie is there for a reason.
Which is why they're so predictable. Because
perhaps
everything is like, nope, that means something. They put that in there for a reason, and so... And now I can see you kind of know how every movie ends.
If you were to go back and watch the movies that were made 40 or 50 years ago, they would have these, long panoramic scenes, 2 minutes of just scenery and music. Well, you would never get away with that in a movie today. Right?
Yeah.
So books are kind of the same way. So if you look at, say, Harry Potter books, they're written, to grab you on the first page. Everything is it's very tight. It's very precise. It's, in a way, it's kind of, it's a little bit controlling. But you compare that to the literature before, when people would read books and they would relish the scene. How did Dickens get away with spending 2 pages describing a hallway in Tale of Two Cities? How did Melville get away with, 3 pages just describing the waves on the ocean? We don't have a lot of tolerance for that today.
Yeah, I have zero.
Yeah, and it's,
and I want to. It's not that I don't want to.
Right.
It's just like, I feel brutal. It's brutal. It's just agonizing.
Yeah, I would guess that you would enjoy, and I enjoy, and I think you do too, a well-read audiobook can really build that bridge between something that would be hard to tackle on our own, because we're always busy. We always got stuff to do. Right. So it's kind of practical. It's like, okay, I'm reading this, but get to the point, because I got stuff to do.
Right.
If you're just taking a nice leisurely drive and you hear this description and you build the picture in your mind, it's a different experience.
It is. Yeah, I agree.
So I have a theory about this. I want you to tell me if you think there's any validity
Is
here.
worth wait? waiting for the
No,
episode?
it's not.
Okay.
But that people use these books, they used to be, like Dickens, he would write just these long, on and on books like that. They were writing in a time before technology.
Right.
This was the only entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't necessarily, people didn't want them to get to the point because this is what they're doing for entertainment. If it's over so quickly, well, now what am I going to do?
You're absolutely right. I mean, in the 1800s, there's no electricity. So there was nothing to do and nowhere to go. So what did you do? Well, read books to the whole family. That was basically the entertainment and the education of children at a time when we had the highest literacy rate really in the history of the world. I mean, the white population in North America in the early to late 1800s was the highest that it's ever been on Earth. Couldn't have been the schools. Compulsory education didn't come in until later in the game. It was the fact that it was literate immigrants who read good and great books, and starting with, of course, Shakespeare and the Bible. And then other great literature that came in. You had Dickens and Melville. You had the great classics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, right? And they would read these things, and that was just the education of every man.
Yeah.
And now, it's dying. It's sad.
So I guess in a world before movies, 3 pages describing the waves,
Not bad at all.
So it has to do with the microwave society. I want it now. I want to know, like, that's the issue. You are one of.
Yeah.
So forcing yourself to read these books is kind of like deprogramming.
Maybe. It's a way to put. Is it? Can you read for half an hour without looking at your phone 2 or 3 times in the middle?
Yes, I can. But so I have very short windows where I get to read. And so that's part of my problem is, like, I don't have very much time to read. So when I read, I want it to be
worthwhile.
I want it,
valuable.
I want it to feel like, okay, I feel like, when I read a Winston Churchill book, it's like, okay, I have a part of history. I understand you can learn virtue and vice and a lot of things from Winston Churchill.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like, okay, even though it's not a theology book or philosophy book, I can still learn very much from that. So I struggle. I think that's why I struggle with, and I don't want to struggle with it, but that's why I do with fantasy or just the art of storytelling in general, is because I'm like, I don't have much time. I gotta figure this out. Like, what are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to convey?
Yeah. So you're waiting to, like, get to the point, and what you're missing is that we're there right now. This is the point. We're in it.
Yeah. Well, John Senior in The Restoration of Christian Culture, he talked about it's how it's the literature that is the most significant mode of transferring values and beliefs to some degree, character from one generation to another. It's the stories we tell our children. It's the stories we hear growing up. And a lot of us maybe didn't hear the good and great stories growing up. Especially guys your age, and like you said, didn't read much in high school, busy doing other stuff. And now, of course, young people are, very distracted with electronic amusements, and I think this is one reason why fathers need to really take strongly the reins and say, okay, we're going to shut down electronic entertainment and read in this family.
Okay, I want to put a comma there because I want this on the show.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay,
all right, we're gonna have to ask this question again.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just go ahead and get started.
Yep.
Oh, love this. What's it called?
Tyrconnell.
Go to Ireland just to get some, huh?
Yeah, just flying over there. Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles, here with Adam Minahan and Andrew Pudawa. We're talking about literature and the moral imagination. And we just had a really good conversation off air. So go to Facebook, where this is all being recorded. You can...
Or YouTube.
Yes. Anything else? Are we doing...
No. Periscope, yeah.
Are we on Periscope?
Yeah. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. We're there. There we are.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah. Ecce homo.
The Catholic Man Show is
Behold.
everywhere. Yes,
Behold.
behold.
Okay. Ask your question again.
Well, my question was, or I was talking to you off air about I struggled with like reading fantasy, reading fiction books because I want to get to the point. I want to know what it is. I don't have a long period of time to read. I don't have it blocked off very much. So when I read, I want to know the answers. I want to know, tell me, teach me. And you were telling me like there were a lot of things that we discussed, but you also said there was a reason why men have to grab this back.
Well, yeah, I would. We were mentioning one of the most influential books in my life was The Restoration of Christian Culture by John Senior, and I can't recommend this book highly enough because it convicted me. It changed me because kind of like you, I read kind of depressing, existentialist, uninspiring, relatively meaningless literature because we couldn't really discuss it properly in high school. And then as a young adult in my 20s, I was busy. I'm getting an education, I'm starting a family, I'm building a business, and I just didn't read fiction for 10 years.
Yeah.
Or more. But when I read Restoration of Christian Culture, I was totally convicted because he points out that it is the literature of Western civilization that more powerfully than anything else transfers the values, the character points, the essence of the fabric of our civilization from one generation to the next. That literature lasts. It lasts more than other elements of culture. Music changes and, fashion changes. The movies, they come and go so fast you can't even watch them before they're gone, and then they're forgotten. But the books, that is what builds that lasting generational understanding. And, people say, well, what is a good or great book, right? I mean, how do you define it? One definition I heard, and I like this one, is a great book is a book that you can read again and again and again and again and get more out of it every time you read it. Of course, that would put the ultimate great book, the Bible, because you could read it an infinite number of times,
right,
and get more out of it. But I read, I had never read Anna Karenina, and so here's what happened when I turned 50. I realized I was probably more than half my life was over, and so I had this problem, like, how am I going to get educated before I die? As if that was like really important. I don't know. And I have a friend, and he's very much more educated than I am. And I said, would you be my reading coach? I asked him, I said, would you be my personal reading coach? And he said, okay. And I said, so tell me what to read, because I got all these books, but I can't read them all. So the first assignment he gave me, Anna Karenina by Tolstoy. Okay, this is not a small book, right?
Right.
So I started, and I try to read, get a really serious book over Christmas, because it's kind of a slow time in my business. And
Okay, yeah.
I like the distraction from the bustle of other family stuff.
Right.
So I read this book, and I just thought, wow. I mean, as I got more into it, I was crying as I was reading this book. I was elated as I was reading this book. I was horrified as I was reading this book. All of these characters and the truth of their decisions and their life and all of this was just so vivid in my mind. When I got to the end of it, I thought, I gotta read that again. I turned to the first page and I just started reading it again. Yeah,
chain reading.
I've never done that before.
Yeah, I have definitely not done that.
But that's the effect of that book was wow. I just scratched the surface. It's so powerful. It's so awesome. And so, if you hit a book like that, another book I'll mention along those lines is Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. So it's kind
David
of
Bates will be happy about that.
It's a retelling of the Greek myth of Cupid and Psyche. And you finish that book and you're just like, wow, what did that mean? Right? And you just want to read it again.
Yeah.
Because you only got on the surface of it. So that's the kind of book that, I think John Sr. was referring to, a book that transmits generationally these deep level truths.
They've done studies on this about if you want your kids to be Catholic, the importance of the man, the father being the practicing one in the house, and versus the mother, and how if the dad is the practicing. I suspect that there is a lot of correlation between religion and literature in this regard, whereas if you as the father are promoting literature, if you're reading to your kids are more likely to grow up as readers. I have no evidence to back this up. This is just my gut that tells me there's something connected here.
Well, the American Library Association did actually commission some research that proved that yes, children who are read to a lot when they're young grow up to become adults who like to read. $100,000. I mean, I would have told them that for half the price if they'd asked me, but
1%,
But it is true, and of course, the choice of literature. That's also the dad's job. So, are we going to read stories that bring the children joy and mirth? Are we going to read them stories that help them develop that imaginary world that they can then go to when, a lot of times I've heard kids say, when I'm depressed, I imagine things. When I'm struggling, I imagine things. It's a classical term, furnish the mind. Furnish the mind. So what are the images and words and ideas that we put in? Well, that's going to stick there most powerfully through the literature in the book. So I think we got to see dads. They've got to take the lead here and just, turn off the sports game, right?
Yeah.
Unplug, turn off the modem, whatever it takes.
Which is hard to do.
It's very hard to do.
Yeah. We can be honest about that. I know that's hard for me to do. I have one follow-up question to this. And Adam, you probably have time for one question.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I think you have to pick the right kid. Once again, I have 3-year-olds, so we're reading stories like The Three Little Pigs.
Right.
But I get so mad when I go to the library and we come home with these where the first little pig runs to the second little pig. No, he gets eaten. Okay, and I know it's more politically correct that none of the pigs die, but we're missing a fundamental natural law, consequences, and I think that's part of that's one of the teaching. That's what you learn from some of these fairy tales, is that bad stuff happens when you make dumb decisions.
Yeah. That is such an important point. There's a very good study of education, in the history of education in this country, by John Taylor Gatto. It's actually called An Underground History of American Education. And he points out that when the progressives took over and the psychologists took over education, they also took over children's publishing. And one of the things is they eliminated a lot of reality from children's literature. So, 150 years ago, death was something that you encountered in life. And that's a good thing, because it reminds you of eternal things, of last things, of real things.
Right.
But there was this whole move to eliminate death from children's literature. In fact, one of the most banned books in the 1970s in libraries was Bridge to Terabithia. I don't know if you know that book.
Yeah.
But it was banned in libraries.
I've read it, and that was one of the first times I cried.
Yeah, because she dies.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
I hated it and loved it. I remember, we read that in 4th grade or something.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, so that we don't have much time, and that leads up to my question that I had.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a book that ends bad, evil prevails or wins.
Yeah.
Or the bad guy is raised up. Is that a good book?
Well, real quick now.
Yeah.
Okay, look, there's 4 types. So type 1 would be whole books. That's where good is good, bad is bad. It's not, it's unequivocal, it's clear as day, and good wins. And that should be, 80% of children's literature. Then there's healing books. Books where good is good, bad is bad. Good doesn't win, but there's redemption. Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales, like The Little Mermaid, The Match Girl.
Right.
Okay.
There's
There's redemption in the story. Then there's broken books, right, where good is good, bad is bad, and bad wins. such as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right?
Mm-hmm.
The value of that type of book is to say, well, if you take what you've got and you extrapolate that out, you do a reduction ad absurdum, that's what you'll get. That's why the dystopian literature has been so popular. The Hunger Games and the Allegiant series, and that's why 1984 and Brave New World are classics, because we want to see what are the consequences of evil so we don't go that way.
So they're like warnings.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's one last, and that is twisted books. And that's what we see much more of today than we did even 40 years ago. And that's where good is portrayed as evil and not good, or evil is glorified. And we need to stay away from those, which is why libraries aren't particularly safe places anymore.
Andrew, I have a lot more questions for you. However, we have to end this segment. We're going to continue on the Council of Man. Join the Council of Man if you would like, thecatholicmanshow.com. Check out IEW.com for more on Andrew Pudewa. We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
And cheers to Jesus.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
if you can we just like maybe go for another
Like
20 minutes or something?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah, I got
because
nothing on my
I would
schedule.
like to just like ask you
I just know
top
that
10 book, or like I want to ask you some books.
Yeah, sure.
our supporters, they look a lot like us. They've got kids, young, and
They look a lot like you.
I mean, demographically speaking.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean, let's
'cause- Thank goodness they don't
let's
look
divide
like them,
it
right?
into categories of books to read to your family,
Mhm.
right, and then books to read for yourself.
Okay.
Because
should we?
Yeah,
then
off
it's a
the-
little clearer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Turn
Okay.
off the
So,
live stream.
guys, appreciate it so much. Go to thecatholicmanshow.com. You can join the Council of Man to check out this part.
The Catholic Man Show. Oh, you said that. CatholicManShow.com.
Yeah.
The COM button.
COM.
And man, if you could sell this here,
It's great, isn't it?
yeah, I don't think you can buy it here, but if you could,
I need to click this button.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And
Live
then
with your game.
hit. You can end the record and the stream, because the stream is still probably going on Twitter.
gosh, if we just had a great bookshelf wall
I know.
we could sell or something, right?